That's what we were going through. We had, casting directors telling us, no, a black man should do this. No, look at me, homeboy, Shonda Kwanda Nikwa, I want my money. Say, I want my money.
At 68, Robert Townsend finally breaks his silence about the blacklisting that followed his refusal to be their dancing monkey.
The stereotyping, I've auditioned for muggers, rapists, slaves, I knew I was never going to win an Oscar for playing a rapist,
Right.
I raped Sally Field in that last movie. Thank you, Academy,
For decades, the industry celebrated Jordan Peele and Ryan Coogler as pioneers while deliberately burying the man who opened those doors first.
Bill Cosby hired Robert Townsend to shoot Bill Cosby was set to do a TV show on Netflix.
I remember that.
He reached out to Bill Cosby, I want you to do it.
Right.
Nobody was Robert Townsend to shoot nothing.
Special right there, okay.
Special nothing.
Right.
Nothing.
Robert Townsend was a filmmaker whose early work exposed their racist machinery so effectively that Hollywood spent 30 years making sure he'd never have that platform again. This is the story Hollywood never wanted you to hear. In 1984, a young Robert Townsend had just come off a powerful performance in A Soldier's Story alongside Denzel Washington. For the first time in his career, he felt like he might actually make it in Hollywood. The casting director, a middle-aged white woman with perfectly styled hair, looked him up and down with the clinical efficiency of someone evaluating livestock. "You're here for the 8-ball role," she said, not looking up from her clipboard. Townsend glanced at the character description. Street-smart pimp with gold teeth. Talks jive. Intimidating, but ultimately harmless comic relief. His stomach dropped. After months of Shakespeare classes and years perfecting his craft at Second City, this was what they saw when they looked at him.
Oh, we were going through it, and rather than go crazy, we said, the Black Acting School was a part of my stand-up when I was, starting out at the Improv. I used to do a whole routine about, going to these auditions, and then Keenan came up with the idea and said, we should do a full-out sketch and have...
That wasn't an isolated incident. It was the routine. Week after week, Townsend would show up to casting calls for characters named Midnight, Licorice, Boot, or Razor. The roles were always the same: drug dealers, gang members, slaves, or comic sidekicks whose only purpose was to make white characters look smarter. Townsend had spent years honing his craft. He could recite Hamlet's soliloquy flawlessly. He'd studied method acting with the best teachers in New York. He'd performed improv comedy that brought audiences to their feet. None of that mattered when Hollywood looked at his skin color and saw only stereotypes.
When you love what you do, you just want to, I had a pure heart, as an actor. I just want to do everything. And I didn't know that they would put me in a box. And that's, and Hollywood Shuffle was about breaking out of that box.
The breaking point came after A Soldier's Story earned 3 Oscar nominations in 1985. Townsend thought this would finally open doors to substantial roles. He met with his agent, excited about the possibilities. He wanted to do more projects like Soldier's Story. According to him, these were films with real characters and real stories. His agent looked at him like he'd asked to direct the next Star Wars movie. She said they only do 1 black movie a year, and they had just done it. 1 black movie a year. That was Hollywood's unspoken quota in the 1980s. 1 film with predominantly black characters. 1 chance for black actors to play something other than criminals or servants. And if you were lucky enough to be in that 1 film, you were supposed to be grateful, stay quiet, and wait for next year's opportunity. But Townsend couldn't stay quiet. Late at night, he started writing down every humiliating audition experience. Every time a director asked him to talk more urban, every character name that sounded like it came from a minstrel show, every moment when his humanity was reduced to a racial caricature. The material was so outrageous, it became comedy gold. Working with his friend Keenan Ivory Wayans, Townsend began turning his pain into satirical sketches. They called it Black Acting School, a fictional academy where black actors learn to degrade themselves for white audiences. The sketches evolved into something bigger, a full-length film that would expose Hollywood's racist casting practices with surgical precision. They would call it Hollywood Shuffle, and it would change everything. There was just one problem. No studio would finance a movie that criticized the very system they profited from. If Townsend wanted to tell this story, he'd have to fund it himself, a decision that seemed financial suicide but felt like artistic survival. Hollywood Shuffle premiered on March 20th, 1987, and immediately sent shockwaves through the entertainment industry. This wasn't subtle commentary. This was a direct assault on Hollywood's racist infrastructure.
Yeah, this is the audition stuff.
Yeah.
This is like a lot of my friends are really trained, and this is what they go through.
Do we have this audition clip? We can put it up, and it'll explain what we're talking about.
The film's Black Acting School segment became instantly iconic. It showed black actors being taught to shuffle, jive talk, and degrade themselves for white audiences. The instructor's advice was horrifyingly real. Remember, you're not a person, you're a type. Critics were stunned. Roger Ebert called it a logistical triumph that announced the arrival of a new talent. Gene Siskel and Roger Ebert gave it 2 thumbs up. The New York Times, LA Times, and Washington Post all praised Townsend's fearless satire. But something strange happened in the weeks following the film's release. Despite positive reviews and decent box office performance, Townsend noticed a shift in how Hollywood treated him. Meetings became harder to schedule. Projects he'd been considered for suddenly went to other actors. The Whisper campaign had begun.
I used my own money. I used money. I had worked on different movies. I was in A Soldier Story, Streets of Fire. I did TV commercials. I was the Midas Muffler Man. I sold chicken McNuggets.
Yeah.
And then eventually, I ran out of all my money and I started using credit cards.
While other filmmakers were getting studio deals after successful debuts, Townsend found himself financing his own projects. The message was clear. Hollywood would tolerate his success, but they wouldn't fund his rebellion. The film's impact extended far beyond entertainment. Hollywood Shuffle became required viewing in film schools and media literacy courses. It inspired a generation of black filmmakers to create their own content rather than wait for permission. But for Townsend personally, the cost was immense. He'd spent his life savings exposing an industry that now viewed him as a threat. The very system he'd criticized was quietly working to ensure he'd never have that platform again. Eddie Murphy, at the height of his fame, asked Townsend to direct his 1987 concert film, Raw. It should have been a career-making opportunity. Instead, it became another example of how Hollywood would use Townsend's talent while limiting his opportunities to tell his own stories. Raw became the highest-grossing stand-up comedy film of all time. Townsend's direction was flawless, but rather than leading to bigger opportunities, it reinforced his position as someone who could execute other people's visions but couldn't be trusted with major resources for his own projects. The trap was perfectly designed. Acknowledge his talent just enough to avoid accusations of racism, but never give him the power to create another Hollywood Shuffle. The road to the 5 Heartbeats began long before Townsend had the success of Hollywood Shuffle behind him. During his small role as a member of the fictional Motown-style group The Sorrels in the 1984 film Streets of Fire, Townsend had been captivated by the world of R&B vocal groups and their untold stories of triumph and exploitation. He began seeking out real musicians from the era, eventually connecting with the Dells, the legendary group whose 4-decade career had survived every trend and transformation in black popular music. Traveling with the Dells, Townsend absorbed stories that would never make it into sanitized Hollywood biopics. He learned about the systematic exploitation that record labels practiced on black artists, contracts designed to enrich executives while keeping performers in perpetual debt, racist booking practices that limited where groups could perform, and the psychological toll of success that came with strings attached. These weren't just business stories. They were human dramas about friendship, ambition, and the price of dreams in an industry built on racial exploitation. The original screenplay was directly inspired by The Temptations, and Townsend had met with former lead singers David Ruffin and Eddie Kendricks with the intention of hiring them as technical advisors. Their stories of internal group conflicts, drug addiction, and industry manipulation would form the emotional backbone of his fictional 5 Heartbeats. But when he brought the project to 20th Century Fox, studio executives vetoed the involvement of Ruffin and Kendricks, fearing that Motown founder Berry Gordy Jr. might sue for rights infringement.
Still will forever be grateful to Robert Townsend. Will I work with him again or not? It doesn't matter in the sense of my gratitude towards him, because he fought for me. He allowed me to do my job.
The studio battles began immediately. The 5 Heartbeats was initially developed at Warner Brothers, the same studio that had signed Townsend after Hollywood Shuffle. But despite their previous enthusiasm for his work, Warner Brothers put the project into turnaround, citing script and story issues, industry code for content they couldn't figure out how to market to white audiences. The real issue wasn't the script's quality, it was its refusal to sanitize the black experience. Studios wanted to remove scenes dealing with racism in the music industry. They wanted to eliminate the church sequences that grounded the characters in authentic black spiritual tradition. They wanted to soften the portrayal of record industry exploitation, turning it into a feel-good story about talented young men achieving their dreams rather than a complex examination of success's costs in a racist system. Townsend refused every compromise. He'd already proven with Hollywood Shuffle that audiences were hungry for authentic black stories, even when those stories made white audiences uncomfortable. But Hollywood wasn't interested in authentic black stories. They were interested in black stories that reinforced rather than challenged existing power structures. After Warner Brothers passed, every other major studio followed suit. The project bounced through Hollywood for years, accumulating rejections and half-hearted interest from executives who could see its commercial potential but couldn't stomach its uncompromising vision. Finally, the script landed at management company Mora, Bresner, and Steinberg, where managers who understood independent filmmaking recognized its value. They brought the project to their friend Joe Roth, then chairman at 20th Century Fox, who had himself been an independent filmmaker before rising to studio leadership. Roth understood what Townsend was trying to achieve and agreed to finance the film, but with significant constraints. The budget was reduced, marketing support was limited, and studio executives made it clear they expected the film to appeal primarily to black audiences rather than receiving a wide mainstream release. When production finally began, Townsend faced new challenges. Despite casting himself as one of the singing and dancing leads, he couldn't actually dance, a fact he had to constantly hide throughout filming. The studio's penny-pinching budget meant every scene had to be carefully choreographed, not just artistically, but financially. Actors whose off-screen attitudes sometimes rivaled their on-screen drama had to be managed while maintaining the collaborative spirit essential to the film's authentic portrayal of group dynamics. The casting process itself revealed the limited opportunities available to black actors at the time. Future stars like Niecy Nash, Jussie Smollett, and Don Cheadle stood in line at open call auditions, desperately seeking their big break in what they recognized as a rare opportunity to play complex, multidimensional black characters rather than stereotypes. The film's authentic musical sequences required unprecedented attention to period detail. Townsend worked with Stanley Clarke, the brilliant bassist and composer, along with Tom Bell, one of the originators of the Philadelphia International Sound, to create songs that sounded like genuine artifacts from the Motown era. A Heart is a House for Love performed by the Dells, reached number 13 on the R&B charts, proving that the film's music could succeed on its own merits. When The Five Heartbeats premiered on March 29, 1991, it represented everything mainstream Hollywood had said black audiences wouldn't support: a complex, nearly 2-hour musical drama that refused to simplify its characters or their experiences. The film captured not just the joy and glamour of black musical culture, but its pain, exploitation, and internal contradictions. These weren't noble victims or simple success stories. They were fully realized human beings navigating an industry designed to profit from their talent while denying them power. Critics were divided, with some praising Townsend's ambition and others dismissing it as overly sentimental or unfocused. But audiences, particularly black audiences, embraced the film with a passion that surprised everyone. For the first time, many viewers saw their own family histories reflected on screen. The church traditions, the neighborhood dynamics, the complex relationships between success and authenticity that defined black life in America. Yet despite its cultural resonance, the film was barely promoted by the studio. Fox's marketing team struggled with how to sell a black musical drama that wasn't a biopic, gang story, or comedy. The film received limited theatrical release and quickly disappeared from mainstream consciousness, finding its true audience only through home video and cable television reruns. The pattern established with Hollywood Shuffle was becoming clear. Townsend could create culturally significant work that resonated deeply with audiences, but the industry would ensure it remained marginalized rather than celebrated as the mainstream success it deserved to be. By the mid-1990s, Robert Townsend had created 2 classics, directed the highest-grossing stand-up film in history, and inspired countless filmmakers. Yet his name was rarely mentioned alongside other influential directors of his generation. The erasure was subtle but systematic. Film retrospectives would discuss the rise of independent black cinema without mentioning Hollywood Shuffle. Lists of influential filmmakers would skip over Townsend's contributions. Even when his work was referenced, it was often diminished or dismissed.
Why isn't Robert defending this brother?
Speaking up for him.
I mean, Robert, do you think? Oh no. I was like, are you telling me you? I don't know. What you mean? Okay, you think he did it, or you know? No, I don't think he did it, but I can't say anything. Why? He's the only motherfucker that hired you.
The Bill Cosby controversy revealed another layer of Townsend's impossible position in Hollywood. When allegations surfaced against Cosby, Townsend found himself caught between loyalty to someone who had supported his career and pressure to publicly condemn him. His measured response satisfied no one. Critics accused him of protecting a predator. Industry insiders noted his reluctance to completely cut ties with powerful figures. The episode demonstrated how precarious his position remained. One wrong statement could end what was left of his mainstream opportunities. The 2000s brought new challenges. Townsend continued working, directing television movies and smaller projects. He created The Parenthood, a successful sitcom that ran for 5 seasons on the WB. But these successes were rarely acknowledged in discussions of black television excellence. When The Parenthood ended in 1999, Townsend faced a harsh reality. He was being written out of his own story. The filmmakers he'd inspired were getting the recognition he'd been denied. The doors he'd opened were credited to others. The final insult came with the rise of streaming platforms. Services like Netflix were spending millions on content from black creators. But Townsend's foundational work remained largely invisible. His films weren't featured prominently. His story wasn't being told. The algorithm-driven nature of modern media consumption made his erasure complete. Without active promotion, his work simply disappeared from cultural conversation. New generations of viewers discovered Black Panther and Get Out without ever learning about The Meteor Man or Hollywood Shuffle. Industry events would celebrate diversity and inclusion while ignoring the man who'd been fighting those battles for decades. Awards shows would honor Black excellence while overlooking the pioneer who'd made much of it possible. The message was clear: you can be influential, but only if we decide to remember you. In 2018, something unexpected happened. A new generation of filmmakers and critics began rediscovering Robert Townsend's work. Social media posts praising the 5 heartbeats went viral. Film students shared clips from Hollywood Shuffle with amazement at its relevance. The Criterion Collection announced they were releasing a restored 4K version of Hollywood Shuffle, validation that had been decades in the making. Suddenly, Townsend's pioneering work was being reassessed and celebrated.
I'm thrilled, man. And 30-some years later, that movie is still kicking.
The timing wasn't coincidental. As Hollywood faced renewed pressure to address systemic racism, Townsend's early critiques seemed prophetic. His films hadn't just been ahead of their time. They'd been actively suppressed because they were too truthful. Jordan Peele, Ryan Coogler, and Issa Rae began acknowledging Townsend's influence in interviews. Film schools started teaching Hollywood Shuffle alongside She's Gotta Have It as essential Black cinema. The narrative was slowly being corrected. At 68, Townsend finally received the recognition he'd been denied for decades. He was honored with Lifetime Achievement Awards. Film festivals held retrospectives of his work. Critics wrote articles about his overlooked contributions to American cinema. But perhaps most importantly, he never stopped creating. His documentary, Making the 5 Heartbeats, provided behind-the-scenes insight into his struggles to get the film made. He continued mentoring young filmmakers through his foundation and teaching at USC. The man they'd tried to erase had survived through sheer persistence and talent. His influence could be seen in every Black filmmaker who chose to tell their own stories rather than wait for permission. His spirit lived in every project that chose authenticity over acceptability. Robert Townsend's greatest victory wasn't any single film or award. It was proving that integrity could outlast even the most systematic erasure. He'd been silenced, marginalized, and forgotten, but he'd never stopped working. Now, as a new generation discovers his work, the full scope of his impact is finally being understood. He didn't just make movies, he created possibilities. He didn't just break barriers, he built bridges for others to cross. The rumors are true. Robert Townsend was deliberately kept out of the conversation about influential Black filmmakers. But the truth has a way of surfacing eventually. And the truth is that Hollywood tried to erase one of its most important voices, and failed. Today, when young filmmakers pick up cameras to tell their own stories, they're walking a path that Robert Townsend carved with credit cards, determination, and an unshakable belief that Black stories matter. They tried to silence him. They tried to erase him. They tried to make him disappear. They failed. His legacy isn't just in the films he made. It's in every Black filmmaker who refuses to stay in their assigned box. It's in every artist who chooses authenticity over acceptance. It's in every story that gets told despite the system trying to prevent it. At 68, Robert Townsend has confirmed what many suspected. He was blacklisted, marginalized, and deliberately erased from film history. But he's also confirmed something else: that truth, talent, and persistence can overcome even the most systematic oppression. Anyway, that's it for this video, folks. Bye.